们所栖息的亚洲地大物博，但是
almost half of the world's extreme poor continue to live in Asia.
而亚洲开发银行报告显示，2050年或将有30亿亚洲人迈入富人阶层。我们该如何缔造亚洲世纪
The decisions that policymakers take today are going to be the ones that are going to determine whether we see a very positive scenario.
亚洲与中国的经济又该怎样发展？专访亚洲开发银行副行长史蒂芬·格罗夫。
大家好，欢迎收看今天的风云对话，我是阮志山。今天要跟我们进行风云对话的是刚刚上任1年的亚洲开发银行的副行长格罗夫 Stephen Grove。那么亚洲开发银行在1965年成立，它的总部设在菲律宾的首都马尼拉。大家可能觉得奇怪，怎么可能会设在菲律宾首都马尼拉呢？马尼拉现在是菲律宾现在是很穷的国家，可是大家别忘了，这个是风水轮流转。1960年代中期跟末期啊，菲律宾可是亚洲首富的国家之一哦。当初除了日本以外，这个亚洲最富的国家可能是菲律宾，所以当初当然既然设立亚洲开发银行这种以援助为主的这个金融机构，当然设在一个比较有钱的地区，就没有想到这个菲律宾的经济现在每下愈况，到现在变成外销非佣的国家。那么今天的古罗夫呢，他会跟我们谈一下亚洲开发银行在过去40几年以来它的这个所担任的功能，还有在我们中国在1986年加入亚洲开发银行以来，我们一共获得了180几个项目，240亿美金的援助，也直接的导致了我们在改革开放初期我们中国的发展。所以我们今天跟古罗夫来谈一下亚洲开发银行的种种。
亚洲开发银行简称亚行，是亚洲和太平洋地区的区域性金融机构，与联合国没有隶属关系。亚行自成立至今，始终致力于消除亚太地区的贫困，提高人民生活水平，并以实现没有贫困的亚太地区为终极目标。去年10月，史蒂芬·格罗夫出任亚行副行长，全面管理亚行业务。
Mr. Grove, from your perspective, we would like you to have evaluate the whole Asian economic situation. For example, how do you evaluate the Chinese economy now?
As far as how we view the Asian economy today, is we're cautiously optimistic about Asia as a whole. Last year we saw a growth of about 7.5% for emerging Asia. We're projecting somewhere around 7.3% for this year as a whole. So we're quite optimistic. We're reasonably optimistic about the growth prospects for Asia this year and next and the year following. But of course, there's going to require, in order to achieve good solid growth in the long run, there's going to be a rebalancing that's going to be necessary in the Asian economies, and really looking to be less dependent on external demand and more dependent on internal trade within Asia, on intra-regional trade, on domestic demand and growth that's generated domestically as opposed to growth that is based on external demand.
China's parent now is in transition period. When you try to extend the domestic needs, you got to have money who have money to support it, to buy something. So what's your suggestion in this transition period of time? What's your suggestions?
For the last couple of decades, China has focused a lot and appropriately on infrastructure investment, on hard sector investment, which has been appropriate and has been the underpinning of this incredible growth we've seen over the last couple of decades. But as we transition, there's going to have to be a more spending that's going to focus on the social sectors, more spending on education, more spending on health, more spending on social safety nets. Number one, what that does, of course, is it provides more income flexibility for the population. They're going to be they'll have a little bit more disposable income when they can rely on social services that are provided and made available through government programs. But the other part of it is it reduces the instinct that many people will have for precautionary savings. And of course, we need to see a reduction in precautionary savings in the economy in order to free up and make more efficient use of that capital in the long run. So there's a couple of things, and I think this is all, again, well anticipated in the government's plans. It's all things that many of the government leaders are talking about and focused on. But the challenge is on the implementation of this over the medium term.
I interviewed a renowned economist. He said, China, you cannot rely on export. He said the real economy is service.
Yes.
Do you agree with him?
No, we agree entirely that there's going to need to be a transition to a more service-oriented economy. There still is going to be a need and plenty of space for manufacturing as the backbone of the economy, and manufacturing will still have an important place in the Chinese economy. But the economy needs to climb up the value chain and move more towards a service-oriented economy, which of course will have an impact on employment. Will have an impact on the long-run sustainability of economic growth. So we think that this move towards services is an important one, and it's one that's going to also allow, I think importantly, a focus on SMEs, which are really the backbone both of a service economy, but also the backbone of employment as well. So we think that this is a good transition to look to.
2012年，中国经济已经在转型中放慢了脚步。10月3日，《纽约时报》网站报道指出，由于全球经济动荡和减速阻碍了亚洲各经济体的发展，亚行已经调低了对中国经济增速的预期。有经济学家认为，增长放缓仍是健康的，政府部门当以经济增长的品质为重。
South Asian countries have different level of growth, economic growth. Countries like small, but they are prosperous. But the others, like Philippines and Indonesia, big but poor. So how do you see overall of this situation?
Well, I think overall, again, this issue of thinking about integration is going to be critical. Despite the fact that we've seen really positive increases in intra-regional trade over the last couple of decades, we still see these economies being largely dependent on exports outside of the region. So I think the one thing that we need to be looking at is increasing the interregional trade, increasing the ease at which these countries can trade with each other. Because as we see economies like China climb the value chain and move to services, necessarily there's going to be a shift of focus of that kind of lower end investment and lower end manufacturing can easily shift and benefit other economies in the region. So we think that the degree to which we can ease those barriers that don't allow that to happen, it'll have important returns to these other economies in the region. It'll help them climb out of the poverty and deprivation they find large portions of their population living in today.
So in other words, when the U.S. market and the Europe market is shrinking, you encourage the countries within this area, including China, to open their market to sustain and support the local economy. Is that the...
That's indeed it. That's it in a nutshell. And that's what's going to really determine the trajectory of growth in the long run for the region. And the degree to which we can encourage domestic consumption is going to be an important factor in how sustainable the growth trajectory is for Asia as a whole.
由于美国经济复苏不见起色，欧洲国家也继续在债务危机中弥足深陷。去年以来，中国和其他一些亚洲国家的出口额锐减，这也成为这些国家经济增速降低的主因之一。亚洲有诸多国家对外依存度过高，而增速放缓则适时地为他们在区域内调整经济增长点提供了空间。
So in terms of export, the South Asia countries and China as well, they all rely on the cheap labor and the good quality of the production. But now the Chinese, for the past 2 years, the domestic wage and salaries increased around 40-45%. This trend also affect the South Asia countries. So how the local industry can adjust this rapid rise of the wages?
Well, that's a lot of the way that the economy is going to be able to handle that structural change is going to be the degree to which, as we've discussed before, how successful the economy is climbing the value chain, moving towards more service-oriented sectors, which are higher wage, higher productivity sectors. But this is also critical, I think, for China, because we see, as you well know, an aging workforce in China. And in order to address the challenges that an aging workforce presents to an economy, you need to increase productivity. You need to increase productivity rather dramatically in a fairly short period of time. This is the rate at which the workforce in China is aging is unprecedented in the world. I mean, it's aging much more quickly than many other countries are. So this focus on productivity, this focus on a shift to more service-oriented, more higher productivity sectors is going to be what will determine how successful China is, again, at maintaining a sustainable level of economic growth in the long run.
But it's not easy for the foreseeable future. What can we do now?
Well, there's a couple of things that China can do. I think first is having a really very, very good handle on what and projection on what domestic demand is in the short to medium term, what regional demand is going to look like, and then lastly what global demand is going to look like, and matching the industrial plans and industrial policy to fit with those projections of that demand, both the trajectory of that demand, but also what's underlying that demand. What kinds of things are there going to be need for in the future? So it's that, but it's also looking toward other non-traditional trading partners, diversifying both, as we've said, within Asia and boosting intra-regional Asian demand, but also looking towards other partners. I don't in any way mean to suggest that this is an easy process, this transition, but again, it's going to be one that's going to determine how successful the Chinese economy is in the long run, but importantly, how successful Asia as a whole will be in reaching what we think and many refer to as the possibility of an Asian century.
我们所栖息的亚洲地大物博，但是
almost half of the world's extreme poor continue to live in Asia.
而亚洲开发银行报告显示，2050年或将有30亿亚洲人迈入富人阶层。我们该如何缔造亚洲世纪
The decisions that policymakers take today are going to be the ones that are going to determine whether we see a very positive scenario.
亚洲与中国的经济又该怎样发展？专访亚洲开发银行副行长史蒂芬·格罗夫。
欢迎回来。我们刚才和亚行的副行长格洛夫之间的这些对话啊，我们可以知道，亚行在最过去这个40-50年以来啊，它在中国或者是整个亚洲地区开发的这个过程当中扮演了非常积极的角色。那么接下来我们要请格洛夫跟我们谈中国在经济发展当中所面临的什么问题呢？环保的问题。我们在过去我们改革开放前期，我们只顾开放，有很多地方忽略了环保。那么在今后，我们已经发现很多有环保的问题，我们如何的补救？那么亚行在这个地方，它如何的协助有环保问题的亚洲各个国家来解决他们的问题？请看。
中国推进工业化的过程十分迅猛，生产工艺落后以及粗放的生产与经营方式，给生态环境所造成的污染与破坏触目惊心。每年都在增加的水土流失、土地荒漠化、大气污染、水污染等等诸多问题，不但给人们的日常生活带来了困扰，更直接造成了数以万亿计的经济损失。中国发展节能增效解决方案的任务迫在眉睫。
One of the big concerns now in most Asian countries is how do you consider the development and environment? Because for the last decades, some of the Asian countries, including China, we sacrifice our environment. So now, what can we do in this area?
Well, I think that this is, there are very similar questions about the trajectory of growth when it comes to thinking about how inclusive that growth is, the degree to which all members of society are benefiting from that growth, but also thinking about the environmental sustainability of that growth.
Right.
as you've referred to. And I think that the kinds of things that an economy and a government need to consider for both of those are very similar. At really thinking about what are the underlying drivers of growth. And I think that for China, we're seeing very, very encouraging signs in the 12th five-year plan, in a lot of the commitments that China has made internationally with respect to their plans on emissions reduction and their plans on pursuing a more green growth oriented path. And so I think that there are a number of different challenges out there and that will have an impact on the trajectory of growth. I think this forecast that we're seeing coming out of the 12th five-year plan of an average of 7% growth is recognizing this transition, both in diversifying and rebalancing the economy, but also in thinking about what the environmentally sustainable path is going to be. And that necessarily is going to involve some trade-offs. But I think that those trade-offs are important, and I think that the government has recognized, that this is, in order to be a sustainable economic model going forward, that this shift to more green growth kind of path is going to be critically important. And I also think that as you see a change in the urbanization pattern in the country, that represents a great opportunity, because as you see investment moving from the eastern seaboard inwards, you see investment moving into the central and the western regions, and those urban centers becoming sources and locations for manufacturing and for kinds of manufacturing that are a little bit further down on the value chain. That's an opportunity, as that kind of investment is made, to think about it as, how can we make that investment more green? And then also, as you see a shift out of the traditional manufacturing areas in the eastern seaboard and a shift in the pattern of urbanization in those cities, that is also an opportunity to revitalize these cities in a way and think through some opportunities that might exist for greening those cities as well.
In order to greening the society and the industry, do you think the countries like the Southeast Asian countries, they will add up their cost and lower their competitive on the merchandise they export?
I think that each one of those decisions is going to have to be made in within the context that the country finds itself in. There are always going to be these trade-offs, and neither myself nor the Asian Development Bank would suggest that in every single case the country has to choose that which is going to have a lower impact on growth. I mean, because the other challenge we face in the region is, we have a huge level of relatively large level of unemployment. We have lots of people that are still working in the informal sectors of the economy. We have reasonably high levels of poverty. Almost half of the world's extreme poor continue to live in Asia. And we see levels of illiteracy, low levels of education in some countries. All of these are challenges that require reasonable levels of economic growth to address. So there's always going to be trade-offs, and we don't in any way suggest that those decisions are easy. But we also think that if you consider the long-run impacts of a lot of these decisions, it will lead you to different decisions and different outcomes at the end of the day. So the question is really looking in depth at those decisions one by one and deciding what is going to be a more sustainable path to pursue. Sometimes that's going to require decisions that may have an impact on the environment, but other times it's going to result in decisions that will avoid some of those deleterious and negative impacts on the environment.
中国政府已在12个规划中将进一步实现二氧化碳减排列入目标。这一举措受到了来自外部的鼓励。日前，亚行正在为中国一揽子绿色项目提供6亿美元的支持。这些项目将帮助中国迅速发展的二线城市把废弃物转化为清洁能源，减少二氧化碳排放，扩大生态友好型运输，并保护脆弱的湿地区域。
So, from your perspective, what kind of ADB trying to do now in order to help the Southeast countries and Asian countries?
Well, we're focused. One of our main priorities in the region does center on regional cooperation and integration. We think that again for the region is critically important. We work with a number of different programs in that area, but we also have a similar program for South Asia. We have a similar program between China and Central Asia. So these are areas that are really critically important. But also, there's a continued huge demand and huge need for investment in infrastructure for the region. Not one that ADB alone nor the World Bank or any of the multilaterals can meet. There's a huge need for domestic investment in infrastructure, including by the private sector. So this is another area of great focus for us. But the environmental sustainability of all this, as we've just been discussing, is also critically important. And being able to think about, supporting and helping governments think through the trade-offs that they need to make in that area is another point. But then lastly, we don't do any of this at the expense of thinking about the social sectors, about thinking about health, about thinking about education, about thinking about gender equality and making sure that women are benefiting equally from all of these different types of investments and all of these different kinds of political and economic transformations that are taking place. So it's a big agenda for the ADB. It's a big agenda for the region, but it's one that we've been supporting for the last 45 years, and we look forward to continuing to do so.
While for the past years you work with ADB, and when you deal with the different kind of countries in this area and the people's societies, from the bottom of your heart, what do you think this area, what should they go in the future?
We're at a turning point for the region. We're at a point where there's a recognition by many of the governments in the region that we need this rebalance is critically important, that an export-oriented, externally demand-oriented economy is not going to be sustainable in the long run. So the degree to which governments can seriously undertake the kind of reforms that are necessary to rebalance their economies, the kinds of reforms that are going to be necessary to open up their financial markets, to think a little bit more creatively about how to stimulate internal demand, are going to be critical for determining whether we continue this path. We published a report last year called Asia 2050, where we examined a lot of these issues, and through that examination we produced two scenarios, one of which is the Asian century scenario, which looks at by 2050 3 billion additional Asians being newly affluent, seeing levels of income and levels of affluence that equal that of Europe today. That's an achievable objective, that's an achievable path. But also, unless some of these important policy reforms are not undertaken, unless we see some serious work done in those fronts, we could also see the second scenario, which is the middle income trap scenario, where Asia grows at about half that rate, and incomes in per capita GDP is about half the level of the Asian century scenario. So there's a lot of promise out there for the region. I think that we've seen incredible shift of the center of gravity of the world's economy to Asia. 1/4 of the world's economy is now produced in this region. If we see the Asian century scenario, that could increase to close to 50% by 2050. But again, the decisions that policymakers take today are going to be the ones that are going to determine whether we see a very positive scenario in 2050 or whether we see a little bit less of a positive scenario.
今天我们和亚行新任的副行长格罗夫之间这段谈话，他为我们分析了很多亚洲国家在开发当中所面临的这个角色跟问题。当然，他也跟我们谈到了尤其是像中国这种以外销为这个基调的这个国家呢，在今后面临全球这个金融危机了以后，我们应该如何的这个把我们的经济转型从外销为主，把它比例大部分的比例转为这个国内的这个发展。所以呢在这方面也许值得我们做一个思考，就是我们的经济转型到底要多快，走得多远。所以这格罗夫今天给我们的很多分析有很多方面是一种启发我们有新的思维跟新的思路。感谢您收看今天的风云对话，我们7天之后再见。